Hello, everybody. All right, welcome to the Mikestand. Today is, of course, Tuesday, Tuesday, June the 25th, 2025. Oh no, I'm sorry, Tuesday, June the 24th, 2025. Sorry about that. I know I'm slightly late. I'm sorry about that. Just got caught up with some other things, so got a little behind there. But of course, we're gonna give people a chance to come in. I gotta go do something real quick, so I'm gonna put some music on for a moment. Take care of something real quick here, and then I will be right back. All right, I'm back. So hopefully everybody, anyways, hopefully everybody's having a good day thus far, or a good week thus far. Of course, this is of course Tuesday, um, Tuesday, June the 24th. So let's see. We're just, as I said, we're gonna give people a chance to come in. I'm gonna do. I'm talking to you. Gonna do a couple little. Uh, mm, anyways, yeah. Sometimes when things don't go quite right, or when you get a little caught behind, you just kind of realize that. Anyways, so, of course, a friendly reminder, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything we talk about tonight grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So, one of the things I was doing earlier, of course, was watching some more cartoons. Started on the June 1938. Probably the last cartoon I saw for today was Plumbing is a Pipe, which was a Popeye cartoon from June 10th of 1938, where he was asked to where Popeye dropped by and basically tried to help Olive Oil fix a leak, and she was waiting on the plumber, who was of course being portrayed by Wimpy. Um, of course, this marked the first occasion where Margie Hines, who would eventually become Jack Mercer's wife in 1939, would voice the role of Olive after, I think, basically after Mae Quetzal left the role. I believe this was around the time, of course, that Fleischer Studios was planning their move from New York down to Florida. Mae Quetzal decided to retire from the role of voicing Olive Oil so she could focus on raising a family. And so, of course, they had Bonnie Poe come in for a couple of spots as Olive Oil, and then eventually, of course, Margie Hines would take over from 1938 till 1942. Of course, after Paramount had bought out the Fleischers, brought the studio back to New York, and changed the name of the studio from Fleischer Studios to Famous. But with that being said, so now here's what's on tap for tonight. We're already at the 5-minute mark here. Tonight, we're gonna do a little profile piece. There wasn't much in the way of news. I couldn't really find much in the way of news, so So I figured, okay, good time to do a little profile piece. We're going to look back on the history of the Terry Toon Studio. Studio started up by Paul Terry, of course, most notably known for giving us the character of Mighty Mouse, well, Heckle and Jekyll, Farmer Alfalfa, Gandy Goose, Putty the Pup, among others, Fanny Zilch. So look back on the Terry Toons history. Then we'll get into the wrestling wrap-up tonight. Look back to last night's Monday Night Raw. Look ahead to tonight's NXT. Again, some more news coming out of the whole situation about Night of Champions this Saturday, with some major changes happening due to some of the stuff going on. Some speculation as well as some actual news. And then we'll wrap things up with this day in each history segment. But with all that being said, of course, let's go ahead and get started. As I said, we're going to do a little profile piece tonight of focusing in on looking back at the history of Terry Toons. Oh, there we are with that. And as I said, if you haven't already, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage, I'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So let's get into this then. Terry Toons Incorporated was an American animation studio headquartered in New Rochelle, New York, which was active from 1929 till its closure in December 1972, in parentheses here, and briefly returned between 1987 and 1996 for television in name only, unquote. Founded by Paul Terry, Frank Moser, and Joseph Kaufman, it operated out of the K Building in downtown New Rochelle. The studio created many characters, including Fanny Zilch, Mighty Mouse, Heckle and Jekyll, Gandy Goose, Sourpuss, Dinky Duck, Little Rockfort, the Terry Bears, Dimwit, and Luno. Terry's pre-existing character, Farmer Alfalfa, was also featured often in the series. The new Terry Toons period of the late 1950s through the 1960s, this was basically at the dawn of the television age, basically, produced such characters as Clint Clobber, Tom Terrific, Deputy Dog, Hector Heathcote, Hashimoto-san, Sidney the Elephant, Possible Possum, James Hound, Astro Nut, Sad Cat, The Mighty Heroes, and Sally Sargent. Also, during the time, Ralph Bakshi got his start as an animator and eventually as a director at Terry Toons. Amazing. All right. Terry Toons shorts were originally released to theaters by 20th Century Fox from 1935 until 1973. And in 1938, of course, at the time, that was like Farm Alfalfa, Putty the Pup, and Gandy Goose. 1938. After Terry had retired, Terry Toons were sold to CBS, which would later purchase the entire library. Paramount Pictures would eventually take theatrical rights ownership of the Terry Toons library in 1994, which was then already purchased by Viacom, and would purchase CBS in 2000. As of 2019, Paramount Pictures has owned the rights to the studio and its library after the remerger of Viacom and CBS. Now let's get into the history here of Terry Toons, of course. starting off with the pre-Terry Toons era. And again, if anything grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. Also, if you haven't already, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people in here. That'd be appreciated to engage. So with all that being said, let's continue on here. History, pre-Terry Toons era. Terry first worked for Bray Studios in 1916, where he created the Farmer Alfalfa series. He would then make a Farmer Alfalfa short for Edison Pictures called, quote, Farmer Alfalfa's Wayward Pup, 1917. And some later cartoons were made for Paramount. Now, of course, this was still the silent era. Of course, as we all know, the first sound cartoons wouldn't actually premiere until 1928. Of course, oftentimes Steamboat Willie is considered the first first sound cartoon that was produced, the Mickey Mouse cartoon. But however, what I found out is that there was one that came out about a month before called Dinner Time. Granted, there was no dialogue in Dinner Time, but there was definitely sound in it. So, around 1921, Terry founded the Fables Animation Studios, named for its Aesop's Film Fable series, in conjunction with the studio of Amédée J. Van Buren. Then, of course, that name should sound familiar because that was the Van Buren studio that gave us the human Tom and Jerry duo in the early 30s, 1930, 31, 32, around there. And would later, would for a short while as part of their Rainbow Parade series, would actually feature Pat Sullivan's Felix the Cat series. I think he had about 3 or 4 of those in the Rainbow series after Sullivan had passed on. Fables, churned out a Fable cartoon every week for 8 years in the 1920s. In 1928, Van Buren, anxious to compete with the new phenomena Talking Pictures, released Terry's Dinner Time. Okay, so Dinner Time, that was the one I was just talking about. Released in October 1928. I think it was actually more like September 1928, but what did come out before, because I think Steamboat Willie came out in October of 28. Van Buren then urged Terry to start producing actual sound films instead of post-synchronizing the cartoons. Terry refused, and Van Buren fired him in 1929. Almost immediately, Terry and much of his staff started up the Terrytoon studio near his former studio. One staff member during the time was Art Babbitt, who went on to become a well-known Disney animator. All right, so going from Bray to Van Buren to his own studio there. Peak era. Through much of its history, the studio was considered one of the lowest quality houses in the field, to the point where Paul Terry noted, quote, "Let Walt Disney be the Tiffany's of the business. I want to be the Woodworths," unquote. Terry's studio had the lowest budgets, was among the slowest to adapt new technologies, such as sound, in about 1930, and Technicolor in 1938. Yeah, I think even in 1938, he had as of yet, at least where I'm at in June of 1938, I don't think he has yet, as I've been going like in chronological order here, he has as of yet produced a color cartoon by that point. While its graphic style remained remarkably static for decades, it actually followed the sound cartoon trend of the late 1920s, early 1930s very quickly. Background music was entrusted to one man, Philip Sheeb, and Terry's refusal to pay royalties for popular songs forced Sheeb to compose his own scores. Paul obviously sounds like he was trying to be a very frugal businessman, I guess. Some people might call him stingy, and others might even call him Ebenezer Scrooge, right? Scrooge and Marley there, all in one package. Paul Terry took pride in producing a new cartoon every other week, regardless of the quality of the films. Till 1957, screen credits were very sparse, listing only the writer until 1950, solely John Foster, then Tom Morrison thereafter. Director, Terry's three main directors were Connie Rasinski. Now, I know some of you see the name Connie right there, and you're thinking, okay, is that a girl? Actually, no. That in this case, it was a guy. So Connie, the woman's name is usually for Constance, but Connie could also be a man's name, or diminutized for Conrad. Eddie Donnelly and Manny Davis, and musician, musical director Philip A. Sheeb. Terrytoons' first distributor was Educational Pictures, specialists in short subject comedies and novelties, audio cinema in the early 1930s, backed by the production of Terrytoons, and distributed the Educational Library internationally, except in the United Kingdom and Ireland, where the library was distributed by Educational and Gaumont British in partnership with the Ideal Film Company. Now, mind you, even up through 1938, the Educational was still helping to produce and distribute Terry's cartoons. You know. The Fox Film Company then released educational shorts to theaters in the 1930s, giving the Terry cartoons wide exposure. Following the merger between Fox Film and 20th Century, the newly formed 20th Century Fox withdrew its support from Educational Pictures, and the company both backed and distributed Terrytoons. So, and even though Educational, I think, was still listed as a co-producer for the Terrytoons card. Farmer Alfalfa was Terry's most familiar character in the 1930s. Kiko the Kangaroo was spun off from the Farmer Alfalfa series. I just got through, Kiko the Kangaroo only lasted pretty much for 1 year, like 1936 to 1937. I think he had something like, I don't know, 12 or 13, shorts, maybe a little less. Was spun off of the Farm Alfalfa, and the Farm Alfalfa series that started in 1916 lasted all the way up until 1952, I believe. So that was quite interesting. Most of the other cartoons featured stock generic animal characters and designs, one of which was a scruffy dog with a black patch around one eye. Terry ultimately built his series around this character, now known as Putty the Pup. And I think he went through a few names. Putty the Pup went through a few names. I think initially they just simply were calling him the Airedale. And then eventually, they eventually did settle on Putty the Pup. And of course, it's still fairly fresh in my mind because right now I'm watching a lot of these cartoons. So as I said, I'm like right now, just today, started working through the cartoons that came out in June of 1938. So we'll be on those for the next couple of days here. Looks like so. Hey, that shows though. Thanks for dropping in. Um, anyways, we now continue on, of course. Paul Terry may have realized that Educational was in financial trouble because he found another lucrative outlet for his product. In 1938, he arranged to release his older cartoons through home movie distributor Castle Films. Um, Educational went out of business within the year, but 20th Century Fox continued to release Terrytoons to theaters for the next 2 decades, with a new emphasis on quote-unquote star characters. Terrytoons featured the adventures of Super Mouse, later renamed Mighty Mouse, the Talking Magpies Heckle and Jekyll, Silly Gandy Goose, which started up in 1938, was introduced in, I believe it's January or February 1938, and continued on all the way up through 1955. Dinky Duck, Mischievous Mouse, Little Roquefort, and the Terry Bears. Despite the artistic drawbacks imposed by Terry's inflexible business policies, Terrytoons was nominated 4 times for the Academy Award for Animated Short Film. All Day for V in 1942, My Boy Johnny in 1944, Mighty Mouse and Gypsy Life 1945, and Sydney's Family Tree in 1958. Changing Hands. Alright, so let's see now. And as I said, if you haven't already, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, so we can get some more friendly people to engage, I'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So, continuing on here, Changing Hands. The studio was sold outright by the retiring Paul Terry to CBS in 1985, basically the same year that Gandy Goose stopped its short. But 20th Century Fox continued distribution. The deal closed the following year in 1956, and it became a division of CBS Films subsidiary. Later, in 1957, CBS put it under the management of UPA alum Gene Deitch, who also worked, of course, who would later be known for his work, his directing work at MGM, directing some Tom and Jerry cartoons of the 1960s, who had to work with even lower budgets. Deitch's most notable works at the studio were the Tom Terrific cartoon segments for the Captain Kangaroo television series. He also introduced a number of new characters, such as Sidney the Elephant, Gaston Le Crayon, John Dormet, and Clint Clobber. Before Deitch was fired in 1959, Bill Weiss took complete control of the studio. Under his supervision, Heckle and Jekyll and Mighty Mouse went back into production. Besides the 3 core directors of the Terry era, who were still involved as animators and directors. 2 famous studio stalwarts joined the crew. Again, famous studios, formerly Fleischer Studios, which of course Paramount would distribute. Joined the crew Dave Tendler and Martin Terrace. Other new theatrical cartoons included Hector Heathcote, Luno and Hashimoto-san. The studio has also began producing the Deputy Dog series for television in 1959. Another television production for the Captain Kangaroo show was The Adventures of Lariat Sam, which was written in part by Gene Wood, who would later become the announcer for several TV game shows, including Family Feud. Sorry about that. Okay, Phil Sheeb continued as the studio's musical director through the mid-1960s when he was replaced by Jim Timmons and Elliot Lawrence. The best-known talent at Terrytoons in the 1960s was animator, director, producer Ralph Bakshi, who started with Terrytoons in the 1950s as an opaquer and eventually helmed the Mighty Hero series. Bakshi left Terrytoons in 1967 for Paramount's own cartoon studio, which closed its cartoon unit later that year. He would later go on to produce Mighty Mouse and New Adventures for television in 1987, which was also produced by future Ren and Stimpy creator John Kricfalusi. Closure. After the departure of Ralph Bakshi, the studio petered on and finally closed in 1973. As a result of the FCC banning TV networks from owning cable television and syndication of television programs, CBS created Viacom Enterprises to handle all network programs beyond television production and network broad. So they basically had separate branches. It sounds like one for producing and the other for broadcasting. It would seem. On July 4th, 1971, Viacom Enterprises spun off from CBS. Neither Viacom Enterprises nor CBS had any interest in Terrytoons. The Terrytoons film library was still regularly re-released to theaters by Fox. The studio's one of the last short was one of the studio's last shorts was an unsold TV pilot called Sally Sargent, about a 16-year-old girl who was a secret agent. Soon after Sally Sargent was completed, Viacom International ended their relationship with Fox and re-releases ceased. Terrytoons' existence soon came to an end. Art Barch, who kept the studio running after Bakshi left, would soon die along with Connie Rosinski and Bob Kuwahara, reducing the studio to a ghost studio with executive producer Bill Weiss and story supervisor Tom Morrison. Viacom kept the studio open until 1972. By October 1972, Viacom International announced that Terrytoons would leave New Rochelle, relocate to Viacom International's office in New York City. By December 29th, Viacom sold the now abandoned New Rochelle studio, and the company's fate was forever sealed. Post-history. So this is after, of course, the studio closed. Now, we do know, of course, that as was mentioned in the article here, of course, that they did start up. They did start producing a new Mighty Mouse series in the late '80s there. But let's at least read out what was said here. Weiss continued Terrytoons production from his New York City office, with the 1970s Terrytoons cartoons, especially Mighty Mouse and Deputy Dog, being syndicated to many local TV markets. And they were a stable of after-school and Saturday morning cartoon shows for over 3 decades, that's 30 years, from the 1950s through the 1980s, till the television rights to the library were acquired by USA Network in 1989. However, any new cartoons of the studio's stars came from other studios. In the late 1970s, Filmation Associates licensed the rights to make the new Mighty Mouse and Heckle and Jekyll series from Viacom International. Filmation Associates, that should be familiar to you guys because, of course, they're the ones who gave us He-Man and the Master of the Universe, She-Ra, Princess of Power, Brave Star, Black Star, Star Trek the Animated Series. I believe the Groovy Ghoulies are also Groovy Ghoulies, the Archie cartoons, Archie's Funhouse, Sabrina's Teenage Witch, the earlier Sabrina, Teenage Witch cartoons. Let's see. The series was the New Adventures of Mighty Mouse and Heckle and Jekyll and aired from 1979 to 1980 on CBS. Bakishi would later produce Mighty Mouse and New Adventures in 1987, which lasted for 2 seasons. Bakishi and his friend John Kricfalusi inspired the staff to try to get as much Jim Tyre style drawing in the show as possible. Tyre, a standout Terry animator of the original cartoons, with a unique style, became a strong influence on the artists of the Bakishi series, such as now recognizable writers, artists, and animators. Bruce Timm of DCAU fame, the guy who gave us the DCAU starting in 1992 with Batman, the Batman the Animated Series. Doug Mensch, Andrew Stanton, Rich Moore, Lynn Naylor, Jim Reardon, Tom Minton, and Bob Jock. Many of the characters, in parentheses, such as Mighty Mouse, Heckle and Jekyll, Dinky Duck, Deputy Dog, and others, unparenthesed, were slated to make cameos in the 1988 film Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but only Oscar the Timid Pig, Louie Lion, and a character resembling Gandy Goose appeared. They can all be seen during the film's finale. They were also planned to appear in the deleted scene of Marvin Acme's funeral. In 1994, Fox would sell its Terry Toons theatrical distribution to Paramount, which was then purchased by Viacom that same year, and would go on to purchase CBS 6 years later in 2000. However, through the years that have followed since the last Terry Toons TV series material in 1988, the rights have been scattered as a result of prior rights issues and the corporate changes involving Viacom and CBS, especially in 2005, since CBS Corporation re-merged with Viacom to form Viacom CBS, parentheses, Paramount Global as of February 2022, reuniting CBS with Paramount on December 4, 2019. CBS Films was folded into CBS Entertainment Group after releasing Jexy on the same day. Paramount Pictures now owns the theatrical distribution on behalf of Paramount Animation, and CBS Entertainment Group, while CBS Media Ventures, formed in 2006, owns the television distribution on behalf of CBS Animation Productions to the Terry Toons film library. However, some Terry Toons shorts are believed to be in the public domain and have either been issued on low-budget VHS tapes and DVDs or have been uploaded on sites such as Internet Archive. On January 5th, 2010, the first official release of any Terry Toons material by CBS DVD was issued in the form of the complete series of Mighty Mouse and New Adventures. So basically, they're saying that they're right. Basically the rights to the Terry Toons library are all over the place. Basically, got a bunch of different companies owning portions of the library. I guess it's almost what it sounds like. Right. Let's see. In 1999, Nickelodeon attempted to revive the Terry Toons characters as part of a TV series called Curbside. Curbside would have been a parody of late night talk shows with Heckle and Jekyll serving as. So it sounds like what Nickelodeon was trying to do in 1999 is what I think Cartoon Network later did with Space Ghost Coast to Coast. That almost sounds like what seemed to be going on there. Serving as host of the show, along with their assistant Dinky Duck, and would have featured new cartoons featuring Terry Toon characters like Deputy Dog, Sydney the Elephant, and Mighty Mouse. Curbside features talented voices of Toby Huss and Bobcat Goldthwait as Heckle and Jekyll. Bobcat Goldthwait, of course, would go on to do Fluffy on Unhappily Ever After comedy. D. Bradley Baker as Dinky Duck. As Dinky Duck, Mighty Mouse, and Sydney the Elephant. D. Bradley Baker, of course, pretty known, voice actor, a lot of different voices for a lot of different cartoons. Billy West as Deputy Dog. Billy West, another pretty well-known voice actor. Haley Joel Osment as Tom Terrific, and additional voices of Baker, West, Charlie Adler. Charlie Adler, now I do remember some of his work. Charlie Adler was Silverbolt in Transformers, Lowlife in G.I. Joe, among others. And Rob Paulsen, of course, who was the one who gave us Pinky from Pinky and the Brain, Slingshot from Slingshot, and I think Air Raid in Transformers. However, it was never picked up, making it the only Terry Toons show never officially released. Between 2001 and 2002, the Terry Toons characters returned to television in original commercials for Brazilian blue cheese, for what is now America's Dairy Farmers, and fine wine. One such infamous commercial was the Mighty Mouse ad entitled, quote, Dining with Cheese. Dining calmly on cheese in a restaurant, utterly unconcerned with a scene of chaos and terror visibly unfolding in the street outside. That said commercial was then pulled from airing following the September 11th attacks. 2001, 2002. Okay. In 2004, a supposed live-action animated hybrid Mighty Mouse film adaptation was announced for Nickelodeon Movies and Paramount Pictures, with Steve Odekirk of Filmation Animation Studio to produce and direct, but was canceled and has been in development hell since then. However, development later revived in April 2019 for Paramount Animation with John and Eric Heber to write the screenplay, and both Karen Rosenfeld and Robert W. Court to produce. It was later announced in November 2024 Paramount Animation was associated with Maximum Effort with its co-founder Ryan Reynolds as a producer and Matt Lieberman as a writer. And then, of course, I'm not going to go into too much. I'm not going to read through or go into too much detail, but Terry Toons also did have some comic books produced. Of course, among the comic books include, through various publishers, St. John, Western Publishing, Western, which was, of course, an offshoot of Dell Comics. St. John continued through Pines. We said Dell, and then eventually Terry Toons Comics, Paul Terry's comics as well. Now, of course, a number of some of the theatrical film series that we have talked about in regards to include, of course, most notably the Mighty Mouse one, which as soon as I find it here, which ran from 1942 to 1961. Heckle and Jekyll, which ran from 1946 to 1966. Farmer Alfalfa, as we said, ran from 1915 to 1956. Candy Goose ran from 1938 to 1955. Fanny Zelch ran from 1933 to 1938. Let's see, I'm trying to remember. Hector Heathcote ran from 1959 to 1971. John Dormant, 57-59. Little Roquefort, 1950 to 55. Luno the White Stallion, for about a year. They even did a Nancy series, 1942. Putty the Pup, 1935 to 1942. Sad Cat, 1965 to 68. The Teddy Bears, 51 to 56. Sidney the Elephant, 1958 to 63. Some of the TV series, of course, include the Mighty Mouse Playhouse in 53 to 57. Barker Bill's Cartoon Show, 1953 to 56. Let's see. The Heckle and Jekyll Show, 1956. Let's see. The Debbie Dog Show, 59 to 64. Mighty Mouse and the Mighty Heroes, 1967. So there you go. So that's all we got for you on the article today. Hopefully you found that interesting. A little history on, some of the on the Terry Toons stuff there. Sure, some of us at some point probably did see, whether it would be, I think for most of us it would have been in some form of syndication or on one of the TV shows that came around the 60s or 70s there. Of course, the Mighty Mouse cartoons, along with Mighty Mouse, Heckle and Jekyll. Those are probably the two most famous ones. And then Farmer Alfalfa. We went through all that. So I hope you guys enjoyed that article. Learned a few things. So now what we're going to do, of course, we're going to move on to the wrestling wrap-up. So now, before I do talk about what happened on last night's Raw, a prelude to that, of course, there have been some announcements. So the card for this weekend's Night of Champions has been changed up, and we will talk a little bit about that as well. Now, it was reported that supposedly originally the Intercontinental Dominic Mysterio was scheduled to defend the Intercontinental Champion this Saturday at Night of Champions, but the match was canceled. Now, according to reports, it's because supposedly now it was reported that Dominic got injured somehow. They're just saying that he's injured. He can't defend the title, but on last night's Raw, of course, Adam Pearce did tell AJ Styles, who was set to go up against him for the Intercontinental title. Who was set to go up against will get the first shot once he's medically cleared. Now, there are some rumors going out there that this injury angle is more a way to kind of, I guess, go to because of the the current situation in the world right now, particularly over in the Middle East. There are many WWE stars who apparently are kind of afraid to go over to Saudi Arabia. Now, many of them have already traveled there. Many of them are in Riyadh already. As of course, aside from Night of Champions on Saturday, they're also going to have a SmackDown event there on Friday night as well. Friday night our time. So let's see. It's hot outside. Glad to be back at my desk. Hey, Metal. Thanks for popping in there. Yeah, so anyways, as I was saying though, and because of the current situation, of course, the WWE wrestlers have been basically banned from saying anything about anything going on in the Middle East, for fear of potential retaliation. Now, some wrestlers have indicated they don't want to go to Riyadh because of what's going on right now between Iran and Israel and all that. Some of the unrest in the Middle East. So the card for Night of Champions has been changed up a bit, where while the Intercontinental title has been dropped from the show, 2 singles, and we'll get into all that in a few moments here. So, anyways, looking back to last night and continuing the build up for the event on Saturday, the show opened up with Braun Breaker defeating Penta, in which Braun Breaker got the victory on Penta with a spear. After the match, Seth Rollins came out and basically told Penta, "Hey, stay out of my business." And Penta was going, "No," was shaking his head, "No." So, then the second of the 2 Queen of the Ring semifinal matches occurred. Jade Cargill defeated Roxanne Perez. Jade Cargill now advances to the finals being held at Night of Champions this Saturday. Jade Cargill will be taking on Asuka in the finals for the Queen of the Ring this Saturday at Night of Champions. In a match for the WWE Women's Intercontinental title, Becky Lynch retained over Bayley via DQ when Lyra Valkyria had basically interfered and went after Becky, leading to a bit of a confrontation between Bayley. Now, this is believed to be being used to set up a potential 3-way between the women for the Intercontinental title coming up at not Night of Champions, but the Evolution pay-per-view coming up on Sunday, July the 13th. And and then in the other King of the Ring semifinal, Cody Rhodes defeated Jey Uso. He advances. He'll be taking on Randy Orton at Night of Champions Saturday in the King of the Ring final. Now, some other things happened on last night's Raw of note. One of which, of course, as we mentioned earlier, originally Dominic Mysterio was set to defend the Intercontinental Champion against AJ Styles at Asuka. Yep, Asuka. But anyways, as I was saying though, originally Dominic Mysterio is set to defend the Intercontinental title against AJ Styles at Night of Champions, but he apparently come up injured. So because of that, now Adam Pearce did promise AJ would get the first shot once Mysterio was cleared. But they did have segments that did book 2 singles matches, 2 non-title matches, which got some fans a little irked. Because let's see, hello Chris. Let's see, Chris William. Well, welcome. Hey, Chris William. Well, welcome to the show, Chris. I hope you enjoy the show here. Thank you for popping on. And a friendly reminder, everybody, if you haven't already, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people here to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. With that being said, of course, getting back to what I was talking about. So a couple of matches were set up for Night of Champions on last night, Monday Night Raw, which kind of got some people a little bit miffed because it was always believed that Night of Champions was supposed to be that. A night where all the matches were going to be championship matches. And now it's gone down from 3 to 2. Now, granted, some people would argue that the finals are technically championship matches. The King and Queen of the Ring finals are championship matches. But the 2 matches that were set up last night as part of it, Sami Zayn and Karrion Kross will be facing each other at Night of Champions on Saturday. After a confrontation between the two where Karrion Kross is kind of trying to goad Sami Zayn in a bit, talking about how, you were going to lose to Randy Orton in the semifinals, all this and that. And, and like Sami Zayn said, okay. And then all of a sudden turned around and just clocked Kross in the jaw and told Kross, look, I talked to Adam Pearce already. You and I are going to be taking each other on at Night of Champions. So, and then you saw after Sammy's left, then had Karrion Kross had a sly little smile on his face. That's basically what he apparently wanted. Then you also had another confrontation between Rhea Ripley and Raquel Rodriguez, also with Roxanne Perez getting involved. That ended up having Rhea Ripley was originally going to try to put Raquel Rodriguez through the table, only for Raquel Rodriguez to Tejana bomb Rhea Ripley into the table with help from Roxanne Perez. So now, because of that situation, now Rhea Ripley and Raquel Rodriguez are now signed for a street fight at Night of Champions. So that's as much from the Raw side of things. Now, looking ahead to tonight, WWE NXT will be happening on tonight on the CW. Let me just go grab that, of course. Go tell you what's on tap for tonight's NXT, and then we'll go over the card as of now for Night of Champions as well, after I talk about what's on tonight's NXT. Now, tonight in Orlando, they're apparently taping. They'll have one live version, another one being taped for next week. So on tonight's live NXT on the CW with Booker T, Corey Graves, and Vic Joseph on commentary, in a fatal four-way match to set up the number one contender to basically determine the next challenger to JC Jane, set to take place at NXT's. I think it might even be Evolution, but basically setting up the number one contender to JC Jane's JC Jane's JC Jane's NXT Women's title. You'll have Jordan Grace, Izzy Dane, Lash Legend, and Jada Parker in a fatal four-way match to determine the number one contender to JC Jane. I'm not sure if I think it will be at, and either it's going to be at Evolution or Great American Bash, one of the two events there. Tavian Heights is set to take on Javon Evans, with the stipulation being that if Tavian Heights wins this match tonight against Javon Evans, he'll be allowed to leave the No Quarter Catch crew. In a match for the recently vacated NXT Heritage Cup, as champion Noam Dar apparently got injured and was forced to vacate the Heritage Cup title. It'll be a match between two former stablemates in the family of Tony D'Angelo and Channing Lorenzo. And the main event is set for tonight. TNA World Champion Trick Williams will be defending the title against Josh Briggs on tonight's NXT. So a lot of action going on in the WWE right now, of course, as we head to Saturday's Night of Champions event. And just looking ahead again to quickly go over the card, the updated card here. Updated card on tonight's for Saturday's Night of Champions at the Kingdom Arena in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Rhea Ripley will be taking on Raquel Rodriguez in a street fight. Sami Zayn will be taking on Karrion Kross. In the Queen of the Ring finals match, Asuka will be taking on Jade Cargill. In the King of the Ring finals match will be the Viper Randy Orton taking on the American Nightmare Cody Rhodes. Jacob Fatu defends the United States title against Solo Sikoa. And John Cena will be defending the undisputed WWE title against CM Punk. So that's all I got for you on the wrestling wrap-up. So what we're going to do now, of course, is we're going to go ahead and move on to this day in each history, with today being Tuesday, June 24th, 2025. Let's take a look back at this day in each history. History! So, 2015, 1955, 2000, and 2000. All right. All right. So, first off, we're going to head back 70 years ago. As on this date, 70 years ago today, back in 1955. Day in 1955. On this date in 1955, Georgia NWA affiliate Georgia Championship Wrestling had an event from the Atlanta Municipal Auditorium in Atlanta, Georgia. The main event saw a Texas death match in which Art Nelson defeated Jerry Graham. Of course, now a Texas death match, the rules are that it doesn't end with a pinfall. You get the pinfall, and then your opponent has to the count of 10 to get up. If they do not answer the count of 10, then the match is over. Freddie Blassie retained the NWA Georgia Southern Heavyweight title over Reggie Lazowski. Of course, Reggie Lazowski would be the one who would later become known as the Crusher throughout the AWA territories. You also had a time limit draw between Farmer Jones and Roy Shire, and the opening match saw Andre Drapp defeat Dizzy Davis. So that happened 70 years ago today. The Georgia Championship Wrestling held an event from the Atlanta Municipal Auditorium. So now moving ahead to the year 2000. On this day in the year 2000, as soon as I pull it up. So on this date in the year 2000, passing away at the age of 83 was David Tomlinson, who was an English actor, singer, and comedian who portrayed George Banks in Mary Poppins, Professor Emilius Brown in Bedknobs and Broomsticks, and Sir John in voice of Polar Bear in The Water Babies. I believe, I do know at least Mary Poppins and Bedknobs and Broomsticks were Walt Disney productions. They were kind of the, I think they were all like kind of hybrid animation live action shows. So, passing away at the age of 83 on this day, English actor, singer, and comedian David Tomlinson, who of course portrayed George Banks in Mary Poppins, and Professor Emilius Brown in Bedknobs and Broomsticks. And the year 2000 is just so nice that we're going to hit it twice. As also on this date in the year 2000, over in Japan, Sunrise's Escalafone premiered in Japanese theaters on this date back in the year 2000. So in this case, as they describe it here, Escalafone is a 2000 Japanese animated adventure dark fantasy film produced by Sunrise, animated by Studio Bones. Directed by Katsuki Akane, the film is a retelling of the 26-episode anime television series, The Vision of Escalafone. The film was licensed for Region 1, released by Bandai Entertainment, which gave the film a theatrical release in January 2002. All right, so the Escalafone, Sunrise's Escalafone, premiered in Japanese theaters in the year 2000. Excuse me, I'm going to need to go off camera here. I'll put some music on for a quick moment while I'm gone. All right, sorry about that. Anyways, with all that being said now, let me, of course, clear this out. All that being said now, that's all we have for you tonight. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. We'll be back here tomorrow with more Niche News, of course. Also, this Sunday, we'll be beginning our June of 1940 coverage in our historical comic retrospect, looking back to comics going on sale in DC. And with that, I thank everybody for being here tonight, and I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye.